read my lips. Breathe all that you can be. Make a difference, give your dreams to me. Just like the television says, join the army, get ahead, oh please. No time for sleeping, there's too much to do. Don't you forget that we do what they want us to. Let's get nuts, let's spend some money. Take your shirt off on me, let's freak out. Life's just a party. Won't be sorry, Charlie. Taste all your heart's desires. Take a boat ride through the sky and play. Go where it is you want to go. See the world on a float someday. They can be lazy or have some real fun. Nothing's too crazy. Those politicians can't get done. Let's get nuts, let's spend some money. Take a shot of honey, let's freak out. Life's just a party. You'll be sorry, Charlie. Rose-colored glasses seem to be the rage. Oh, Mr. President, in bed with terrorists again. Let's get nuts, let's spend some money. Take a shot of honey, let's freak out. Life's just a party. Won't be sorry. Let's get nuts, let's spend some money. Take a shot of honey, let's freak out. Life's just a party. You'll be sorry, Charlie.
I hope the planet Jupiter is okay. That was a pretty massive sounding explosion there at the end of the song. Hello, our users. My name is John Kulas. I am a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, the best kind of psychology, and roughly 11-year user of R for normal statistical applications. But for the majority of that time, I've also been using, we say R, but I've also been using my analytical platform to not just do analyses, but to execute entire projects. And we do that through a process called literate programming or plain text editing. There isn't a great universal word for it actually at this point, which is kind of what makes part of it exciting. So this general perspective on how to structure work started in the late 70s. 1978 was kind of the first time that as I'm tracking this backwards, that's kind of some of the first specifications of this, putting your narration and your code together. But now in 2025, with 3i Atlas nearing and Halloween coming upon us and all these other elements of convergence happening, we also have access to fantastic software that just makes this kind of way to structure your work very accessible. And so I'm here every week to just promote this way of structuring your work. If you do anything that touches data analysis at all, I'm really adamant and convinced. And I wish more people would be aware of this, and I want to promote this way of creating things because I think this is the way things should be done. If you're working with a process that's just kind of conducive to errors and data management and manipulation and analysis, it it is a process that you are going to make errors if you do it long enough. And it's not about not making errors. Everybody makes errors. It's about minimizing the consequences of those errors. And that's what this process does. So this process gives you a record of everything you've done. You can undo it, and you can correct those errors when they're made. It's funny. I used to, some of my students, some of my better students, would kind of push back a little bit on that error making. Me saying everyone makes errors. Well, I don't. I'm good. I don't make errors. And those are the people that you ought to be most careful of. Everyone's gonna make errors. That works with data. It's gonna happen. You need a process where you can correct it, and it's not a big deal. So anyway, I'm here every week, and sometimes we get collaborators on these sorts of projects that pop by. And like I said, we just want to make ourselves available. If there's anyone out there who just wants to bounce some ideas or ask questions or just kind of see what kind of capabilities might be possible using these sorts of work structures. And so the shared problem solving, we use this metaphor of an academic office hour, and literally the door's open. If you have a question, come on in and we'll try to answer it or kind of problem solve with you. That's kind of how I thrived, I think, when I was a full-time professor. That's what I think I was okay at, pretty good at, and I also enjoyed it a lot. So we want to do that, or I would like to do that anyway. So that's the primary reason that we're here every week. But in the absence of that happening, we're covering a feature of these platforms that we're using to help facilitate this plain text editing and creation of projects within the same platform that you're doing your analytical kind of specifications within. We're covering a topic each week, and this week is a continuation of last week's. Last week, we took a look at something called Project Jupyter, and one of the products that Project Jupyter is working on is a texting or scripting environment called Jupyterlab. And so we installed Jupyterlab and we installed Julia on our computers, and Julia is a language. And this week what we were hoping to do is to explore that a little further by accessing Jupyterlab and accessing Julia from within Jupyterlab, and also crafting some of these documents. So we're going to use Quarto. So last week we just did installs. This week we're going to see if we can leverage those installs to make something. I guess the other thing I should mention here is when I always try to find topical thumbnails for each week's slides. And so it's been a little challenging finding a Julia avatar along with Jupyter or some space theme. And so I stumbled across the art of Miss Fluff. And Miss Fluff has some pretty neat art, and she's got some Halloween themed things here. So take a look if you'd like. Now these cats are kind of what first drew me to. Of course, I love cartoons, but these cats are reminiscent of something called an atomic cat. An atomic cat is kind of a styling of animation of cats that's become really popular across people. She also has this kind of retro futuristic kind of vibe. It's pretty neat. Anyway, check if I'm ever able to give acknowledgement when I'm stealing the art of someone, I will do so. And here you see some of the Halloween themed things. Anyway, Miss Fluff, cool stuff. Check her out. But we're not here to talk about Miss Fluff. We're here to talk about literate programming. Before we get too far, I guess I will also mention that I'm going to start. If you access these slides, and the slides are available in the comments, there's hyperlinks embedded throughout. I hadn't been putting hyperlinks to previous week's slides, but I just started doing that. So what you'll see now starting this week is this first, after the title slide, you will have access to the previous week's slides in case there's any content in there that might be helpful for you. And of course, we've also mentioned over the weeks that you can probably get a sense of what the URL is going to be if you're ever interested in a week's slide. You just need to know when it took place. So every Tuesday is, we've been doing Tuesdays now for probably over a year. We started out on Fridays and now we're on Tuesdays. Okay, so tonight's gonna be fun because tonight we're going to actually craft documents, which is the point of this whole weekly session, to craft documents. Last week we just kind of introduced ourselves to what Jupyter and Julia were. this week we're going to use them. So this week's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into this week, let's get our Bullwinkle transition here into what the heck happened last week.
Well, last time you remember, we learned the details of the fiendish plot of the metal-munching mice to take over the entire USA.
It's easy. We just get rid of television. Then everybody leaves country in disgust. Is our scorched air policy.
We also learned that the big cheese, leader of all the mice, is none other than that scurvy scoundrel, Boris Badenov.
The biggest threat of all.
And what of our heroes?
Yeah, what?
Captured by the mice, they have been turned over to the tender mercies of Herman the Vermin Exterminator.
You gotta think of a way out of this mess, Rocky.
I can't, Bullwinkle. I'm too low in my mind.
Oh, say not so, Rocket. How come?
Well, just look at these pictures the big cheese gave us. His plan is working. People are leaving the country in droves.
Some of them in trains, too.
So last week we spent a little time looking into what these things are because as someone who does a lot with data and has been using these processes to not just do data analyses but to write reports and create slide presentations and things like that. I had heard of Jupyter and Julia, but I'm coming from an R background. R is the analytical language that I've built up skill and experience with to the point of it's probably sufficient for the things that I need and want to do. Now, that's currently true. That may not be true in 2, 3, 4, 5 years if we're still here and there aren't aliens on 3i Atlas that come and invade and take over. Or AI, again, either way. It seems like there's going to be, could go either way. Could be an AI apocalypse or could be a 3i Atlas apocalypse. I don't know if one is preferable or not, sorry. So anyway, I had heard of Julia and Jupyter, but I hadn't really done much exploration into them because R is sufficient for me. But it is feasible that within, as long as there's not an apocalypse, within the next, who knows, it could be next week, you do have something come up that you see is facilitated by, let's say, Julia, and you want to leverage it within your report. So anyway, so that's, I guess it's reasonable, even if you're comfortable within a language, it's reasonable beyond just curiosity to look into it and see what some of the capabilities are. There's a few different ways to install Jupyterlab. Jupyterlab is the scripting environment that we chose to explore and to actually use to look at Julia from within. And some of those options are listed here in the right hand column. So these are all alternatives to the process that we took. The process we took in my estimation, and I'm not a Python guy, I'm an R guy, but in my estimation, with a little bit of experience with Python, I had previously gone through the Anaconda route, and the Anaconda route is preferable to someone many people who work with Python like that Anaconda setup and environment, and it gives you access to all sorts of things, not just Jupyterlab, but I believe you can also set up a RStudio environment in there. I mentioned Spider a couple weeks ago. That's the IDE that I used to use with Python. But within Anaconda, you can also have Jupyterlab or Jupyter Notebook or the predecessor, IPython. Hey, look at this. Let's see here.
Vamos a ver, ¿qué es lo que pasa con los alcaldes? ¿Qué es lo que pasa con los alcaldes? ¿Qué es lo que sí, ¿qué está pasando con los alcaldes?
Hey, hello.
Hey, Diego.
Hey, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I should have known that Python would take out Diego. It's like a bat signal for Diego.
No, I don't actually use Python at all. Last time, well, I used it a little bit, like to create a web crawler and some web scraping, and whenever I need to use machine learning, which is not that often, but
that's how I introduced it too. Was 6 or 7 years ago when machine learning kind of became big in our field, or it became well known within our field. A lot of the support that we were seeing was Python based, and so a lot of us kind of went over to Python for that. That's the last time I really used it too. But so last week, in order to access this IDE that we're interested in, we did actually first install Python. And so the reason we installed Python was to have access to its package manager. And its package manager is it turned out to be a very slick and easy and ungoopified, so not laden with all kinds of other stuff. It was a simplified direct installation of Jupyterlab, which is what we wanted. Now you're going to have to do this through the command prompt, which not everyone's going to have comfort with, but I do have a hyperlink in here as well, kind of talking you through some of the ways in which you can access and navigate the command prompt, and I'll show you that again tonight, how that's actually done. But once you're there, you just type this pip install Jupyterlab and it'll place it on your machine. And then in order to access Jupyterlab, you're going to want to once again navigate within the command prompt environment. You're going to want to navigate to wherever it is that you have stuff that you want to work with. So it's probably going to be most efficient if you use project folders. And then at the command prompt, you just type Jupyterlab and you have access to Jupyterlab. It'll spin up whatever your default browser is, and within that browser you have the functionality of the Jupyter engine, so you can do all kinds of stuff. Now by default that's going to be powered the way we took the route we took. By default, that Jupyterlab interface is going to expect to be powered by Python, but we're going to see tonight that we don't need to do that. So other options, like I said, the Anaconda installation is very popular. If you want to set up multiple different environments with possibly different IDEs even, or different installations of, let's say, the software, so a different version of Python, different version of R, you can do that all within these different Anaconda environments.
They have our studio too there.
Yeah, I thought so. So I'm glad you confirmed that. So I thought you could. You can also have a local installation just on your desktop of Jupyterlab. So that might be an option for people who are more comfortable in kind of pointing and clicking and seeing an icon on your desktop, and that's how you access it. I believe that that's something that you get there. There is something called GitHub Code Spaces, and that seems like that might be an option for people as well. If you do a lot with GitHub, it's possible that that might be an environment that you want to check out. Now, I did, when I was looking into this, I did see that, and this may have been a couple years ago. Let's take a look. Let's see when this was. So this was 2023. There's not a great date on here, is there? Two years ago. It says it's timestamped, but I have that timestamped on that person's walkthrough of using GitHub Code Spaces to access Jupyterlab. And the reason I put it on there with a timestamp is apparently the default, at least in 2023, when you initiated your environment, was to have access through a VS Code portal or shell. And he walks through how to actually change that over to an environment that looks more like Jupyterlab. So anyway, there's many options in order to access this. If you want the simplest, if you want the bare bonesest, I would say, then go ahead with our 5-step process here, which does require first a Python installation. And again, the only reason you're installing Python is to have access to this pip. So it's possible that package manager, you could also maybe, I guess I don't know. I've always associated it with Python. You probably do need Python to be installed in order for pip to actually work. But pip is a very smooth and clean way to install. In terms of Julia, the recommendation of Julia we didn't follow. So the recommendation of Julia was also command line based, and it required a little more than I was willing to go over on these sessions. So what we did instead was what I'm calling the pleb install, and we just used their installer. And so there's a Windows installer, there's a Mac installer, there's a Linux installer, and then there's this scary kind of text up here that says, hey, you probably don't want to use this. Take a look at our actual install. So if you wanted to follow the actual recommendations of the people who are in charge of Julia, you don't need to do this. But this was fairly hard. This was fairly painless. With one exception here on this, and it's not a point of pain, but if you're going through the standard wizard-based installation, make sure, not just with Julia, but also with Python, and anything that you're going to have to interact with the command terminal, the command prompt terminal with, adding it to that path, capital P, capital A, capital T, capital H. It's an acronym. I don't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it basically makes sure that what you're installing is going to be accessible and findable and executable from whatever project directory you're in, wherever you happen to be in your computer system. And so that seems to be important. So if you go through the normal wizard install, make sure to take note of, and one of the reasons I mention it is I'm notorious for, on these wizard installs, just accepting defaults, right? There's always that customized versus default. I always go default. Well, don't do just default if you're following these recommendations. Make sure to add the program to the path. And again, this is true both for Julia as well as Python. Okay, so we got them both on our computer. And then today what I thought we would do is see if we can actually author something powered by Julia, but scripted within those Jupyterlab notebook kind of environments. I don't know, I thought it'd be fun. So I did some playing with this on I think I did this computer actually. I didn't load anything on this computer. That's not entirely true. So I did actually install some Python packages so I could have access to some capabilities, some graphing capabilities, just to play around with it a little bit. But other than that, I haven't done anything since last week. Now, I was able to see that Quarto works just as is. So I have Quarto installed on this machine. We now have Jupyterlab installed and Python installed as well. And so I could render documents from my Jupyterlab notebooks just fine. But there's also an extension. We're going to come back to this extension. So there's a Jupyterlab Quarto extension that supposedly makes our use of Quarto from within Jupyterlab a little easier, a little more seamless. And again, we're primarily using this AI recommendation that says, yeah, you can, cool ass, you say you want to play with Julia and Quarto. You can go ahead and do that in RStudio if you want, because that's your normal environment. But you may actually want to check out Jupyterlab and the Quarto help pages as well. They actually have kind of walkthroughs for the Jupyterlab environment as well as their positron environment, which Diego and I tried out positron. It's been probably a year or so. Have you done much with that, Diego? Have you gone back to positron at all?
No, just for when we were using the AI assistant build within positron.
Okay, me too. I thought about doing it this week, but there's enough just with Jupyter that I figured probably don't need to.
I did do stuff with Visual Code because other people at work also use VS Studio.
Yeah.
So I've been playing with that around a little bit more, but not positron.
Okay. Yeah, so then that should be a fairly seamless transition to positron, since positron is built on VS Code, but it's supposed to be optimized for data scientists. Whereas VS Code, my understanding that environment is, software developers and people who interface with these sorts of programs for different purposes. We, Diego and I, and the other data analysts, our purposes, even though we might be coming from different disciplines, psychology, political science, geography, astronomy, whatever it is, the things that we're trying to build are all kind of similar. Reports and papers and presentations.
I ended up going back to our studio from from VS Code because it's just more familiar. And yeah, VS Code is, as you said, is more for developers and people who are doing like data science is not something they focus on really.
Well, I think so, Diego, you've been gone a few weeks here, but what I've been doing on these weekly sessions is I've been following the alphabet. So Julia and Jupiter are actually associated with the letter J. So I think once I get up to P, so J, K, L, M, N, O, P, in a couple of months, I'll probably revisit positron.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, yeah, so I'll make sure to give you a heads up on that too, in case you want to jump on and we can both test drive it again, since we haven't used it for a while. But so the Quarto help pages also, they're optimized for, or they kind of focus on using Jupyter or using positron or alternatively VS Code. I'm kind of considering those to be kind of the same thing. Now this week I do have some extra resources put on here that I found helpful, and we're going to come back to these collectively. But I'm not going to spend any time on these YouTube tutorials. But if you're interested in Jupyterlab, just if my resources on the previous page don't get you installed, these are the tutorials that I followed that were helpful. And then just in terms of navigation, this one we talked last week about the many keyboard shortcut the keyboard shortcuts that are used to navigate Jupyterlab, and this talks through quite a few of those. Now we're going to also be looking into two different. We're gonna want to do two different things tonight, and the primary thing is connect Julia to Jupyterlab. But as long as we're doing that, and since by tradition we're focused on R, I thought we might as well connect R as well. And the two processes are a little bit different. But let's go ahead and get started with this. I think so. In order to show how the command prompt is used and navigated, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, before I go there, I'm going to open up just my file explorer, and off of my Kulas directory, you can see I've been playing around here a little bit. There's already a Jupyter folder, but I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll call it, I don't know, Diego, you got any creative ideas for what to call a new folder when we're just playing around with Julia and Jupyter?
Good question. I don't know, maybe something like about astronomy since Jupyter. Yes, testing. Testing.
We'll call it Calliope. I think Calliope is
Galileo folder.
Ooh, I like that. Let's change it, Galileo. Because Calliope is one of the Galilean moons, right? I think he found 4 or 5 of the massive ones. Europa, Calliope.
Yes, exactly. That was exactly my reference. Am I smart or not?
Yeah, you are smart, right? But I don't remember if Calliope is a moon or not. Actually, I know Europa is the big one. Juniper says, I don't. What the heck is that? I think they're called Galilean moons. Ganymede. I think. Oh, Callisto. I was probably thinking Callisto. Europa. We'll call it Europa in celebration of Diego, who's from Europa. And again, I'm doing this in my Files Explorer to show how to kind of navigate, the command prompt once we get there. Let's actually put a file in here as well. I'm going to open up Notepad and just going to create a really basic comma separated value file, and we'll use my favorite names in there. So we'll have 3 variables. First variable called name, second variable called x, third variable called y, and then there's 2 values. There's going to be 2 rows in that data set. And I want to do this just so we can actually see what data looks like within the context of Jupyterlab. That's always something of interest to students, especially students, but everybody really. It's makes you feel more comforting if you can see the data that you're working on somehow. And
Oh,
Jupyter
yeah.
Lab, yeah, Jupyter Lab does have some pretty neat capabilities in terms of just accessing
That's why I
these.
prefer our Studio or Spider. It has Spider too for Python that lets you see the data, and also VS Code and Positron. I prefer that to being able to have like the environment with all the data sets and all the objects you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's normal. And so that so you did an Anaconda or Miniconda install, I'm guessing, and then you're able to kind of set up those different IDEs.
Yeah,
So again, the command prompt, what I did there was I on my Windows-based machine, on these newer versions of Windows, there's kind of this just this find here. You can get this multiple ways. You can go to you can access this through the control panel, or you can just type in CMD. CMD is the old kind of Windows-based MS-DOS way to get the command prompt. And so I should be able to. So I should be able to use my mouse and access the command prompt. I should also just be able to hit return down there on the search bar that I have. So I'm going to try that. And that worked. So the command prompt shows up. And in terms of the navigation, again, there's some help pages on this week's slides to help you figure out how to navigate this sort of environment. But really, the only command you need is CD. CD stands for change directory. And CD double dot is going to take you down a folder. So right now I'm in C users erg admin. This should take me, once I hit return, just to C users. I'm going to go down again, and then I'm going to build up. So I'm now at my root directory. Now I can kind of redirect. It's kind of like backing up out of a driveway and going into a different driveway. And if you want to see the option, I guess another command that I use here is called dir or dir/p. dir/p is going to just only present information that's visible in the vertical space that you have. But if dir is going to give you a listing of relevant information that's in there to help you navigate. So for example, off my C drive, I see that I also have a culos folder or directory. So directory and folder, we're using those terms synonymously here. So now instead of cd dot dot, I'm just going to go cd culos. And I don't think this is, man, it's been a while since I've really been in here, but I'm pretty sure it's not case sensitive. So we'll try culos without the capital K, and that works. And then we did Europa. And the only reason we went here is to have kind of a fresh workspace. And I'm now going to access Jupyterlab. So I'm just going to type in Jupyter space lab. You literally can do this anywhere in the command prompt. It's just that the files that you're going to have access to are going to be associated with wherever you're located on the computer. And so it's probably a good idea to have some forethought in terms of where you want to be working. What's your actual workspace? And so here's Jupyterlab. You can see that, oh, it came up as a text file. Let's resave that. I thought I saved that as a CSV. I was probably talking too much. So I'm going to file save as, and I want to put an extension on the end of that. CSVs are kind of important for data use and management. And now it's showing up in my file view. I could double click that and I see my data file represented there. Now my understanding is you can't really do much in here, so there's no sorting, there's very little you can do, but you can at least see it, to Diego's point. And I guess mine is it's just comforting to be able to see that kind of information. Now the text file, we can read that in as a CSV as well. It doesn't need to have the CSV extension on it in order to be treated as a comma separated variable file. However, Jupyterlab has some sort of some sort of awareness that that's something that is probably containing data, and so it gives you that visual cue. Okay, I'm sorry. So let's take a look at a notebook and let's see if we can render a Quarto document. Now, if you recall from last week, there's a few different types of cells in here. There's code, there's markdown, there's raw cells. Let's go ahead and put in a little code. And right now, the only option I have to power that code is Python. Python's the only computational language engine that we currently have loaded in our session, and that's there because we used Python to install Jupyterlab. I think that's probably why it's there. So let's actually look for some Python code to do Python or data viz. See what kind of things we have out. Ooh, there's some nice violin plots. Do you like violin plots, Diego?
Not really. They're kind of like box plots, but they show more the variance. I mean, they're fine.
They're like sexy box plots. They got like, they got hips and stuff. Matplotlib is a very popular data visualization library within Python. Python users they use packages just like us our users do, but they tend to refer to those as libraries more frequently than packages. That's my kind of experience anyway. And so what I'm looking for here is I'm just looking to see if there's some code that we can grab. And we're going to do the same thing with Julia, by the way. I'm going to look for the Palmer Penguins visualizations because those tend to be a little more easily accessible. There's some more violin plots. Well, here, actually, I've gone here before. So there's a Palmer Penguins GitHub repository. And in order to access this, we're going to need a few of those. We're going to need a few of those libraries. So in order to access those libraries, I'm going to, from within Jupyterlab, I could do this at a terminal as well. I'm going to open a terminal. Now, one of the neat things about Jupyterlab is you can kind of rearrange your workspace in all sorts of different ways. But I'm going to install the packages or the libraries, and it's a little difficult to see. And I don't know why that is. Now this, I should already have Palmer Penguins installed because this is one of the packages that I played with over the course of the last week, but we'll go through the installs on each of these. So I'm installing through pip, so just pip install, and then pandas is a very popular Python library to work with data. It's a really slick way to access data. And again, I'm talking as someone that uses R and very little, sorry, I'm talking wrong. Pip install Seaborn. I have no idea what Seaborn is, but we want to have it accessible here. Now, I should be able to copy code now and put it into my notebook. The Python convention, if you're not familiar with it, but this as convention, it's kind of a shorthand notation for referencing the library, and this is very common within Python. The pandas, the import, it's almost universally referred to as just PD, which is kind of funny because I got a cousin who we call him PD as well, Paul Douglas. So this is in a code. I just took this straight from GitHub. I should be able to control enter and run that. And the blue is telling me that it probably ran. I'm getting a warning. What's that warning saying? I don't like that. Refrain from using this package. Oh, it says it's going to be removed. That shouldn't really affect us. So let's go ahead and put in a couple more code cells. So this one looks like it's just accessing the Palmer Penguin's data and then taking a look at the first few lines there. So I'm going to paste. Whoop! I shouldn't paste in the output. I should just paste in the code specification. Control Enter. And again, the tutorials that I'm watching, people seem to prefer Shift Enter, but coming from our studio, I'm really used to using Control Enter to access and run the commands. The difference seems to be Shift will run it and then move your cursor down to the next cell, whereas Control will just stay in the same cell, and that's comfortable to me. Now, I'm going to get rid of this terminal here. We should be able to, change this. So, and this is the purpose of a notebook, is that interactive. You're supposed to be able to go back and forth and kind of get different output. I can just put top 10 in there instead of top 5, which is the default for that function. Now you see one of the differences between R and Python, and there's all kinds of memes and jokes about it, but Python starts its indexing with the number 0, and so that looks weird and foreign to me as a R-based psychologist. Oops.
For developers, apparently that's very important. Like being able to have a 0, apparently that's very important for developing and creating algorithms and stuff like that.
Okay, I never heard that, so that's good to know. When you say developers, are you thinking like software developers?
Yeah, like back-end mostly. Yeah, mostly back-end developers.
So you're starting to see some of the capabilities here of a notebook, and they're interactive, so we can go back, and if we wanted to, it's Halloween, so if we wanted to change that from body mess to bloody mess, we could just rerun. And then you see in the left-hand column here of this chart, colors should be easy to change if we wanted to use our badass. It's our favorite hex des color. I just changed it there in terms of the hex codes, and you can rerun that line, and you see Gen 2 comes through in terms of that color. Okay, so we have here a notebook, and you can take this notebook and you can share it, and people can go in here and they can change and tweak things, but we should also be able to use this notebook and render it as a Quarto document, and that is also done through, looks like there's the terminal. So my terminal is just full of junk, but I should be able to, wow. I'm gonna open a new terminal because that just looks scary. I don't understand what's going on there, honestly. But we have, we should name our notebook, and it should put it right in our file folder here. So we'll call it Penguins, just because we don't have any creativity. Okay. And then in terms of getting a Quarto document, I should be able to, at the terminal, just use Quarto commands and specify this notebook, and it should actually give me a Quarto document. Now we're used to operating with we're used to actually having a YAML specification. Now you can put YAMLs in here in terms of cells within the notebook. We shouldn't. I'm gonna specify that as a raw cell in terms of the content within it. we shouldn't necessarily have to do this because by default, the Quarto rendering should recognize and give us an HTML file. But we should be able to do the same YAML specifications that we've been using for everything else that we've been rendering within RStudio. And so now if I at my console, the terminal, command prompt, if I just type Quarto, and again it's Quarto render, and there's other options than render. There's a preview that's going to become important, but I think we'll try that after we get the extension installed. So I'm just going to implicate the notebook. So penguins.ipynb, hit return. We'll see what happens here. Okay. So it says outputs created. We should be able to navigate to that output here in our left-hand column, but I'm not sure what that's going to pull up as. So the other thing we can do is we can take a look at it within my file folder, file explorer. And there we actually see a Quarto rendered document from a Jupyter notebook. Now, this doesn't look much different than what we're actually seeing within the notebook itself, but we have all of these meta commands that we can use within Quarto that are going to make this actually pretty neat. First of all, I can put a title in here if I want.
Look, you're done with the stream?
No.
Ah.
You can be.
Not
Yeah, I should go have dinner.
Okay, that's fine. Say hi to the fam. Have a good dinner.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
See you guys. So I put a title in there, and again, we're gonna install the extension and come back to this. But let's see what this rendering looks like. What this rendering looks like with the title in there. Shouldn't be a whole lot different. Now, once I have that file open, I should be able to just refresh it, and it should come in. Looks like I didn't get much for the title. Let's try some of our themes. Let's see if themes come through. Now, one of the things that's going to be different in this environment than in RStudio is I forgot. These themes are different on Reveal.js slides versus HTML documents. So that's something that I found out kind of through a lot of headaches, was the theming options that you can provide to a standard HTML document aren't universally shared with Reveal.js slides. I work with Reveal.js slides so often that it was something that I'm used to. I know the themes that I can use in Reveal.js slides, but they're not all supported with HTML. Let's do this before we try themes. Let's see if we can turn off the echo. So the echo is the code echoing that we're actually seeing, here in gray. And Quarto by default is going to have echo equals true. Now, if we're sharing this report with another data scientist, that might be something we want to include. If we're just trying to communicate the results with a stakeholder, that's probably something we don't want to include. So let's actually set echo to false within the YAML specification of this notebook, and should hide that. Yeah, there we go. And the title's now showing. I don't know why the title didn't show up for that one rendering. This is probably a warning. We can shut that warning off. Error messages and warnings we can also shut off. I am curious to see if we can do some of these other document types. So another document type that is something that generally is rendered within Quarto is a PDF. Now PDF requires that tech interpreter and a compiler. So we'll see if Quarto takes care of that. Looks like it's using LaTeX. In our studio and in our applications, we've been using TinyTech, and TinyTech works great. Look at that, I got a PDF. If I pull up that PDF, oh, my table is a little bit rendered off the page, but that is fantastic. So Quarto renderings straight from a Jupyter notebook. That's really neat. Let's see if we can do a reveal.js slide. And because I know that I can apply a theme on this, which is why I'm interested in trying this. I mean, should work. There's no reason not to work. And what I'm doing in the console is I'm just hitting the up arrow. That's kind of, you can do this in R as well. If you use the console, and use the arrow key, it'll kind of cycle through what the more recent commands are. Now, I did a stupid thing there. It is a presentation, but I didn't give it any slides. So if we want to give it slides, we're going to have to actually put some markdown in here. Now this notebook is already getting a little cluttered here. I'm going to use the shortcut command, which is just A or B, which puts things a header and back. And in back of, I'm going to trash that. In back of the table, but ahead of the output here, I'm going to put a markdown code cell. We're just going to call it slide 2, and we'll see if it picks up on that. So save that file. And by the way, as I'm just kind of navigating this for the first time, I don't have anything optimized to the way I like to operate, so I'm not sure if there's saving that's automatically done or if that's something we need to do. Yeah, now we have multiple slides. That's awesome. I just love these reveal.js slides, and that's really quick and easy within Jupyterlab. Let me just one quick thing. We're using Python, so we haven't quite gotten to Julia yet. We'll do that in a second. I just I'm curious if we can get themes on here. Now, again, this is something that extension might facilitate, but I'm just kind of guessing at indentations here in my YAML specification. These matter to Quarto, and what my mind is trying to remind me is that I think that there's two characters in terms of the indents. It might very well blow up, but we'll see if we can get a different theme on that reveal.js slide. Re-render, and again, this is not the most efficient way to use this. There is a preview, and that preview should be more efficient. Yeah, our night came through just fine. We should be able to put let's do a quick picture. I know I get so distracted. I'm sorry, but it's so neat. It's so neat. Oh, look at Chili and his girlfriend, who's got a surprise of dynamite behind her back that she's going to blow him up with. I don't know if that's sweet or not, but let's see if we can get a picture in here. We'll do another, and again, it's getting a little cluttered, but that double hashtag specification should give us second level header, which will give us a new slide within the reveal.js markdown scripting. So we'll call it Chili's girlfriend. Surprise. And then I should be able to just use that exclamation point, square brackets, parentheses, convention. We'll run that and see if it comes through. It comes through in the preview. Let's see if we get a slide. I really like, even though there's an optimal way to do this with preview, I don't mind just having this extra browser tab open and refreshing it. That refresh seems to work pretty well. I don't know if we got chili. I don't see chili though. So maybe I spoke out of turn. Maybe that refresh doesn't always work. So we'll definitely want to see if we can get the preview going. But chili should be here. Where are you at, chili? I actually don't see chili. Chili Willy, where you at? Now, one of the things that, oh, it's hidden beneath. Probably. I wonder if it needs a different code chunk. So it's almost like it didn't recognize that as, it's almost like it didn't recognize that as markdown. And one of the reasons I don't use notebooks is it kind of violates this principle of plain text constructing from top to bottom. Everybody can reproduce it and follow the exact same process. These are intended to be more interactive, and you can play with them and tweak them. There she is. Okay. I don't know why she wasn't showing up. It's possible I just didn't save it quite correctly, but it's also looking to me like in this cell format, it's possible that it wants the slide heading title in a different cell than the content of the slide. We would have to play with that. I'd be speaking out of turn if I said that's what's going on, but that's really cool. That's really neat. Let's get Julia in here so we can actually use Julia. Now Julia is, I have on this week's slides, there's Mrs. Fluff's alien astronaut. On this week's slides I do have, at the very end I mentioned it, but I do have some resources that walk us through a couple of options in terms of getting Julia recognized within Jupyterlab. And I think at first here it's just telling you how to get Julia. We had that last week. And okay, so now we have them both. I think we're at step 3. The communication between Julia and Jupyter has to be established. For this, enter the following commands in the prompt and press enter. We should be able to do this within Jupyterlab itself, but I'm going to close it just because it's possible that that's not the case. And here's my command prompt. It's got stuff in it because we used it to actually spool up Jupyterlab. And where the heck is my... So many tabs. So many tabs. I'm going to have to go back to my slides again. And okay, let's make sure we're on step 3. So step 1, Julia has to be installed. Yeah, we did that. 2, click on the Julia application. All right, I'm glad we read that. So we need to be within Julia, apparently. Now, I should be able to launch Julia from here. There we go. Hey, Julia, how you doing? I kind of like the blue and the green and the red and the whatever it is, purplish jingle ball things on Julia. I like it. Okay, so we're in Julia and it says, I think we do this here using package. It's got some autocomplete, so it's ghosting that for me. It didn't say it didn't like it. I don't, it's a stupid thing to not like, and we're not going to be using Julia from within this environment anyway, but there's like no space between the left-hand margin and the actual printing of the stuff. I want more space. I want a little more padding. But again, these people know a lot more than I do. So Julia, I know this is following the convention. Okay, that looks promising. To use all of these different languages within Jupyterlab, it's using this I convention, and I'd be kind of interested to see what the history of that maybe is. There's an IPython, there's an IR, there's an iJulia. We're just installing iJulia now. I'm kind of looking as we're going and seeing if any of this stuff looks like it means anything to me. It probably just means I need a new computer within 2 or 3 months here. This is what it's looking like. All right, while it's doing that, let's look ahead here a little bit. Hey, look, their screen looks like ours. That's probably good. Maybe, unless they blew up as well. So this tells Julia to use the package. So there's going to be a different package manager. I think that's different than iJulia. iJulia is supposed to be something called a kernel, and the kernel is the engine that powers these different notebooks. By the way, there's dozens and dozens apparently of these kernels that we can use. We did use Python. We're going to use Julia. I thought tonight we could also use R. Take some time to install the iJulia package. Sorry, I probably should have read that. Hey, look, I think we're okay. That's not a lot of time. Should appear like the image below. Okay, so let's try it. I'm not 100% sure how to get out of that because my normal command prompt commands weren't working. So I'm gonna open up a new terminal again and we're gonna go to the same location because we already have a notebook there. And I'm gonna spin up another Jupyterlab. We closed out the previous one. And now if we have access, we should be able to, we should actually be able to start a new kernel. And so I'm gonna, look at that. That's awesome. So if I go to the launcher now, which is another kind of option here within this environment, it's giving me, first of all, I can just go to the Julia console. We're not getting those jingle balls anymore. I don't like that. I kind of liked the jingle balls. But we are getting an option of having the notebook itself powered not by Python, but by Julia. And that's really what we wanted to do. So let's do that. So let's do a Julia notebook. We'll try the same kind of commands and specifications. What do we want to do? Before we might as well just do our YAML here. So let's do, in raw markdown, we'll just say we want to make a HTML file again. We'll try HTML as well as PDF. But I tell you what, there's a lot of jumping around tonight. Next week's recap should be good, I would think, for me as well as anyone out there that actually watches this. Now, I don't know Julia code, so we're going to have to actually find some Julia code. We found Python code, so we should be able to find Julia Palmer penguins. Everybody uses Palmer penguins, right? So I wonder if there's any. Now, DevMotion, I believe, was one of the libraries that we saw on the help page. Well, this is console-based commands. That's kind of not what I wanted. But it should give us access to the data. The problem is I don't know any of the commands, so I don't know how to actually look at the data. So I think let's look at let's see if we can find something different. No, that's not going to help. Julia data visualization. So again, the reason we're doing this is it's something new, so we're checking it out. But it's possible that there might be capabilities that are facilitated by Julia that maybe are a little wonkier in R or Python for that matter. Again, as Diego and I both mentioned, when we used Python, it was because the machine learning capabilities were a little more sophisticated and easily accessible at that point in time via Python instead of R. And so it's very possible that something similar will happen with this different language, Julia. Here we go. This looks like probably something that we want. Generally speaking, with these, there's example code with the visuals themselves. Oh, you know what? Whoa, look at that thing. There's no way this is going to work just out of the box, but we'll try it. I have no idea what that thing was doing, but it looked cool. That for wanting something just basic, probably chose the wrong one, but yeah, it's going to want, so we're going to need some packages. Now, I don't know how to run these, but we can see if we can open up a new, probably console. We probably want a Julia console. And see if we can run these commands here. Import pkg. Oh, it's a lot easier to see here. So I like that about Jupyterlab, I guess. Pkg add plots. And I'm gonna, why does this not look like a console? That's kind of weird. I'm going to, I got too many consoles open right now. Too excited, overstimulated. Kulas is overstimulated. Let's see if we can import and add using that. Now I should be able to do this within Jupyter Notebooks as well. I don't understand navigating this environment well enough, because when I thought I was spinning up, what I thought I was spinning up here was a Julia terminal, like what we're looking at. Oh, it's a console. And then I got confused by this cell here. Like, why do I have a cell? I might have just had to specify a little differently. It's still installing. It looks to me like the error that we got, again, not knowing this language, but it looks to me like the error was probably from a library that we didn't, that the copious amounts of code that we copied is requiring. Like any other language, all the super neat stuff, you don't need packages, but it's usually facilitated with packages. Now, the one that it wanted me to install here, it seems to be, fairly substantial, which makes sense with something like plots. Now, the Python package that is common for visuals is, I think that's matlib plot. I think it's matlib plot, something like that. With R, we usually go to ggplot, but it's possible that within Julia, the library that they're relying on here is just called plots, and maybe they have more functions in them. Maybe it's sufficient. I don't know. Let's while it's installing there, let's see if we have any more. Oh, we should have looked at this. It says to add some packages. It does say get plots, but it doesn't give us any plots. Now, one thing I know is that on the Quarto help page for Julia, there's a neat looking plot there as well. Looks like a butterfly. So I think we'll see if this works. I'm not crossing my fingers too hard on this, just because there was animation on that as well. And I guess there is within this code. It says build an animated GIF. So that @GIF function or specification looks like it looks like it is intended to actually have motion on this code here. So we'll see. Now we're going to have, that should actually render fine within an HTML document. We should be able to even do that on a slide deck. So That would be super cool. Now, one thing that I'm seeing just from the time here is I really didn't want to go into a third week with this, but I think we're going to need to, if nothing else, just to look at the Quarto extension within Jupyterlab that supposedly makes the kind of navigation and previewing and looking at what you're doing just a little nicer, a little easier. And if we do that, so here, I guess I can do this. If we bleed this into a third week on Jupyter and Julia, which I can't believe there's that many people interested in it. So you're looking at some hack that's just trying it for the first time. Although, like I said, at the beginning of next week's session, make sure to watch because we'll do a good recap. But if we do a third week of this, I think what I'll do is I'll try this within Positron as well, or VS Code, or RStudio, or we'll see. You know, just to give it a little more substance. Although this week I never would have thought that this week would take us this long just to see if we can get a Julia visual going here. So I don't know. If you're watching this and you have any ideas, drop me a note. I'm open to suggestions. But I think we probably will. Okay, it's down to the last two here. So I think we probably will have one more session on this, if for nothing else, just to look at that Quarto extension, like I said. The good people at Quarto, who we have nothing but great things to say about, put it together, right? So we might as well try it. Okay, so I should have that available now. I don't know if I need to close and come back in, or if I can just render this. It's thinking. We definitely found something that is not like entry-level stuff. We lost the error, so it's recognizing the package, but it's not printing us something. So the other thing, let's do this while that thinks, and maybe when we come back, we'll actually have something. But I know that there are some example visuals here. So this is Julia code using plots. I wonder if that's how libraries are specified. Yeah, I'm going to stop this just because it's too much, I think. So let's get rid of that. Let's see if we can put in this command specification. Let's see if we get anything. So the funny thing is, it looks like it's rendering. I'm just not getting output. I wonder, I'm going to take my YAML out because I can't believe that that's interfering with anything, but it's possible that's interfering with something. We are using Julia. The chunk specification should only matter for a Quarto type document, a QMD type document. Shouldn't matter, should not matter within a notebook. This is structured like a QMD, not a notebook, but I'm not seeing anything here. I'm not seeing anything here. I guess we can try it as a Quarto document. I'm not sure why it's not showing up within our notebook environment, which is the kind of funny bit. But it looks like it's recognizing something. So we can put the full kind of Quarto specifications in there. I'm going to go make a raw file and say we just want. And again, I don't need to do this because it's going to be formatted as an HTML file by default. But we just want to see if anything shows up here. And so let's save this as Julia. And we'll see if we can render that. So it's a notebook powered by Julia. The name didn't change. Well, that's weird. So something weird is happening with this notebook. And again, it's probably user error. Someone who is not really used to using this. Let's do best practice. Get rid of everything now that we have the dependencies loaded and everything that we want. And let's look for that fancy plot again and see if we can actually steal that one. It's too crazy not to try, right? So let's try that. So I'm gonna actually go to a different location. I'm just gonna spin this up right in the kind of default location that my computer wants to recognize this as. I'm gonna select a kernel. And I wonder if that console needed to be open. It doesn't make much sense to me, but we'll see if we can run this code now and see if anything different happens. I'm wondering if the output was just kind of a function of we had too much open, or if there's a plot command. If there's a plot command that needs to be specified, I'm not understanding why that wouldn't be specified in the code script itself. So that's usually kind of the practice that's used here. I really like how these are looking though. I mean, these are cool looking. Oh, hey, it worked. It just took a while. So we are just too impatient. Look at that. Huh, I was ready to call it a night too. Let's put a YAML specification up here and see if we can get that. See if we can get that Julia plot as a reveal slide document. And then I'm also going to hide that. I'm going to hide the script. We don't need the script. I'm just curious if we can get see if we can get something very basic here. Now, one of the things, again, I'd mentioned this before. One of my hesitations with using notebooks is it violates this principle of just kind of structuring everything. So the first things are sequenced at the beginning of your document, and then everything's executed linearly as you go down. And that's not really the purpose of these. And because of that, the way that the information from your notebook is going to be rendered is going to be dependent on how you interact with the notebook. There's some high-level commands that we can put in here. We can make sure that all the cells are executed when Quarto renders, but I don't think we're going to have time to take a look at all of those tonight. Again, another reason to extend this into next week. So let's see if we can get. Didn't I call this something else though? I feel like I should have if I didn't. Like for whatever reason, I'm not getting the. I'm not getting all the responsiveness that I thought I should on it. Maybe I shouldn't have called it Julia. That was probably not a great idea. Call it Goofy Graph. If we call it a Goofy Graph, though, we probably need to put a picture of Goofy in there as well, don't we? So I'm going to Quarto, and again, it's very difficult to see, but trust me, it's there. It's in yellow, so it says Quarto render. And then I'm going to go Goofy Graph, and then IPy notebook. We'll see what this does. Now, the thing is, I gotta find where it is. And again, there's better, there's definitely better ways to find this. Look at that. Huh. That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat, Quarto. Um, let's just give it a theme and then we'll call it a night. Like I said, we're going to be looking at this again next week. Sorry, everyone. I know this isn't the normal kind of focus of these, but it looks like Julia has some pretty neat capabilities that we should maybe explore a little bit. And again, we should at least give Quarto the, if we're looking at this, we should at least give them an acknowledgement for their extension and check it out and see how that makes things a little bit different in terms of how we interact with this here. Let's look for a different reveal theme. I think there's 15 of them, but again, I get 11. I get confused with these. Dracula, and that might be new, and that's definitely relevant for time of year we're dealing with here, right? So let's try Dracula. There's a couple other things we could do here. Let's put in a picture. I am curious. I'm curious if it needs this second code block. I'm curious if the markdown cells in terms of the slide title specification need to be different than the content of the slide itself, which is what we seemed like we saw with Chili Willy. But maybe Dracula will be different. Dracul. So let's see like a cartoon Dracula. I don't want to get too scary here. I'm easily scared, so I don't think that guy doesn't look too bad. He's a little scary. There's this blue skin one looks a little friendlier. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I could handle that vampire because probably couldn't, but he looks a little less scary to me. So I appreciate that. There he is. Okay, so, and again, I'm not sure I need to save this. Let's see what Dracula looks like. It's really rendering quickly. I don't know if that's Jupyterlab. I don't know if that's the graph that we're making obviously has a lot of complexity to it. I know that there is there's capabilities in terms of caching some of these chunks. I'm not sure if that's being done by default or not. So, I mean, I could make these weekly slides very easily within Jupyterlab just by the half hour of playing that we've done here. I've seen that that's something that we could do very easily. And then if we want to incorporate some different languages in terms of engines to power some of these kind of neat looking things, we could do that. Now we can do something like this with R as well. It's just there's layerings of packages that kind of facilitate this. It looked to me like it might be a little more, it might be fairly efficient with Julia. All right, I went way over tonight. I'm sorry about that, people, but this is kind of neat. Thanks for bearing with me as I kind of play with this stuff for the first time. I will, by next week, I'll try to, I'm not going to be able to suggest any best practices, but I'll see if I can identify anything that I'm doing that definitely I shouldn't be doing, specifically kind of interacting with those terminals and doing so inefficiently and consoles as well. So, all right, cool. We're going to do one more week of this. We got to do this one more week. I don't know if it's going to be Julia focused or not, but it will be Quarto extension focused within Jupyterlab. So it'll be at least one more week on Jupyterlab. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Good night.